My name is Eli Thompson, and at 68 years old, I never thought I would be publicly humiliated by my only daughter. After Amanda inherited $35 million from her grandfather, my late wife, Catherine's father, she transformed into someone I barely recognized. At her lavish engagement party last summer, she looked me straight in the eyes and said those words that still echo in my mind. "You are an embarrassment. You are not welcome here." She had no idea what was coming next. Before I continue this painful story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button if you believe family values should matter more than money, and stick around to see what happens when wealth reveals who people truly are. I grew up in a small town in Ohio where my father worked at the local factory and my mother was a school teacher. We never had much, but they instilled in me the value of hard work and integrity. After high school, I saved enough to attend the state university where I studied civil engineering. My hands were already calloused from summer construction jobs, but I had big dreams. During my sophomore year, I met Catherine Blackwood in a literature class I took as an elective. She was beautiful, intelligent, and came from a world entirely different from mine. Her father, William Blackwood, had built a real estate empire from scratch and was worth millions. When Catherine brought me home to meet her parents, I expected rejection. Instead, William surprised me. After an initially frosty reception and a rather intimidating private conversation in his study, he looked at me and said, "I see something in you, young man, a hunger to build something meaningful." Catherine and I married after graduation, against the quiet reservations of her mother, who had hoped for a different kind of match. Our early years were tough. I started my construction company with a single truck and a handful of tools. Catherine, despite her privileged upbringing, rolled up her sleeves and handled our books from our tiny apartment. We scraped by, sometimes wondering how we would make rent. But we were happy. 3 years into our marriage, Amanda was born. From the moment I held her, I felt a love so overwhelming, it nearly brought me to tears. She was perfect with Catherine's deep blue eyes and what would later become my stubborn chin. William and his wife Judith arrived at the hospital with the largest teddy bear I had ever seen, and something else. Respect in William's eyes when he looked at me. "You are doing good, Eli," he told me quietly while Catherine was sleeping. Better than I expected. As the years passed, my company slowly grew. I specialized in commercial buildings, developing a reputation for delivering projects on time and under budget. By the time Amanda was in elementary school, we had moved to a comfortable house in a good neighborhood, not extravagant by any means, but a home we were proud of. William and I developed an unlikely friendship. He began to invite me to golf, where he would dispense business advice between swings. "Never sacrifice quality for profit," he would say. "Your name is on that building long after the check clears." I took his wisdom to heart, and my business prospered because of it. Catherine's relationship with her father was more complicated. She loved him deeply but carried wounds from his frequent absences during her childhood when he was building his empire. She wanted something different for Amanda, insisting that our daughter would always know she was more important than any business success. As Amanda grew, William doted on her, his only grandchild. Nothing was too good for Amanda. Dance lessons, horseback riding, summer camps in Europe. Catherine and I sometimes argued about the extravagance, as I worried about the values we were instilling. "She needs to learn the value of money," I would insist. "There will be time for that," Catherine would counter. "Let her enjoy being a child." In his later years, as William's health began to decline, he and I had several private conversations that I did not share with Catherine or Amanda. He worried about his granddaughter. "She has never known struggle, Eli," he confided one evening as we sat on his terrace overlooking the city lights. "I look at her and see entitlement beginning to take root. It concerns me. She has a good heart," I defended my daughter, though I shared his concerns. "A heart that has never been tested," he replied, sipping his scotch. "I have watched you build something from nothing. That builds character. Amanda has never had to build anything." I did not know then how prophetic those concerns would become, nor how William was already formulating a plan to address them in his estate planning. "Promise me something, Eli," he said during one of our final conversations before his health took a serious turn. Promise me you will help Amanda become the woman she is capable of being, not the woman her money might allow her to be. I promised him, not fully understanding what that might one day require of me. Amanda grew up in a world far different from my childhood. While not ostentatiously wealthy, we provided her with advantages I could have only dreamed of as a boy. She attended Westlake Preparatory Academy, played violin in the youth symphony, and spent summers at prestigious camps where she made friends with children of doctors, lawyers, and business executives. Despite these privileges, there were moments when I glimpsed the compassionate person she could become. When she was 10, she used her birthday money to buy art supplies for a classmate whose family could not afford them. At 14, she volunteered at an animal shelter, coming home covered in fur and beaming with stories of the dogs she had walked. These memories would later haunt me as I tried to reconcile them with the woman she became. Catherine was an attentive mother, determined to balance the material advantages we could provide with the values we believed in. She insisted Amanda work summer jobs in high school, though these were often arranged through family connections. Still, Amanda learned something about responsibility, even if her positions at art galleries and publishing houses bore little resemblance to my teenage jobs hauling concrete and laying bricks. Our family dynamic changed forever when Catherine was diagnosed with aggressive ovarian cancer when Amanda was 22. The 3 years that followed were a blur of hospital rooms, clinical trials, and brief periods of hope crushed by devastating setbacks. Catherine fought with grace and determination, but the disease proved relentless. Throughout her illness, Catherine worried more about Amanda than herself. "She depends on me too much, Eli," she confided during one of her better days. "I fear what will happen when I am gone. You two are so different." When Catherine passed away, Amanda was 25. At the funeral, my daughter stood tall and delivered a moving eulogy that brought the entire congregation to tears. I was so proud of her strength that day, unaware that grief would transform her in ways I could not have anticipated. In the months that followed, Amanda and I orbited each other like distant planets, each processing our loss in isolation. I threw myself into work, while Amanda quit her entry-level position at a marketing firm and began traveling extensively, funded by the trust Catherine had left her. Paris, Tokyo, Buenos Aires, her social media filled with glamorous photos from around the world. When she returned after 6 months, something fundamental had changed. The grief remained, but it was now accompanied by a hardness I had never seen before, a determination to embrace life's pleasures with an almost desperate intensity. "Life is short, Dad," she told me over the dinner I had prepared for her homecoming. "Mom's death taught me that. Why wait for anything?" She moved into a luxury apartment downtown, far from our family home and its memories. Her new friends were from a different social circle, the children of wealth and privilege who had never known struggle. Weekend brunches, yacht parties, charity galas where the focus seemed more on being photographed than the causes they supposedly supported. I tried to maintain our connection with weekly phone calls and monthly dinners, but conversations became increasingly superficial. Any mention of her spending habits or suggestions about career directions were met with defensiveness. "I do not need financial advice from someone who still lives in the same house after 30 years, she said during one particularly tense dinner. The comment stung, not because of what it said about me, but what it revealed about her. Then came Jackson Reynolds. Heir to a banking fortune, with perfect teeth and pedigree to match, he swept into Amanda's life at a charity auction. Within 3 months, they were inseparable. His family owned homes in the Hamptons, Aspen, and Palm Beach, where Amanda soon became a regular guest. The photos showed a sparkling, carefree existence. "He understands me, Dad," she said, showing me the sizable diamond engagement ring after 6 months of dating. "His mother died when he was in college. He knows what this loss feels like." What concerned me was not the whirlwind romance, but how Jackson seemed to accelerate Amanda's transformation. Her clothing became more expensive, her manner more dismissive of those she deemed beneath her new station. When she spoke of their future, it revolved around which neighborhood they would live in, which exclusive clubs they would join, which tropical destinations would host their seasonal escapes. Not once did she mention purpose, contribution, or the values that Catherine and I had tried to instill. During this time, William's health took a significant decline. Despite his complicated relationship with his daughter, Catherine's death had hit him hard. Now in his early 80s, heart problems confined him mostly to his estate. Amanda visited dutifully but briefly, often checking her watch and fielding texts from Jackson throughout their conversations. "She is slipping away," William remarked after one such visit, his voice heavy with more than physical fatigue. "I worry that I have failed her by making life too easy." "We all did what we thought was best," I reassured him, though his words echoed my own fears. What neither Amanda nor Catherine knew was that William and I continued our private conversations. His concerns about his granddaughter had only deepened, and he had been quietly restructuring his estate plan in response. "Money is a magnifier, Eli," he told me during what would be our final conversation 2 weeks before his death. "It does not change who people are, it simply amplifies what was already there." I fear what it will reveal about Amanda. I did not yet understand that I would be the instrument of that revelation, or how painful the process would be for us both. William Blackwood passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 days after his 83rd birthday. The funeral was held at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, where generations of Blackwoods had marked their passages. The cathedral was filled with business associates, friends, and society figures, many of whom I suspected had not spoken to William in years. Amanda sat beside me in the front pew, elegant in tasteful black, her grief genuine but contained. Jackson sat on her other side, his hand placed supportively on her back, in a gesture that seemed practiced for optimal viewing by others. Throughout the service, I noticed how often Amanda glanced around at the assembled crowd, as if cataloging who had come to pay respects. 3 days later, we gathered in the wood-paneled conference room of Harmon, Webster, and Pike, the law firm that had handled William's affairs for decades. Roger Harmon, a contemporary of William's, with a shock of white hair and penetrating gray eyes, conducted the reading of the will. Besides Amanda and myself, Jackson had accompanied us, along with William's younger sister Margaret and 2 cousins from Boston. Roger methodically worked through the document, distributing specific bequests to longtime staff, donations to William's preferred charities, and family heirlooms to various relatives. Amanda sat forward in her chair when Roger finally cleared his throat and addressed the primary inheritance. "To my beloved granddaughter, Amanda Catherine Thompson, I leave the sum of $35 million. Amanda's intake of breath was audible. Even though we had known William was wealthy, the specific amount seemed to startle her. Jackson squeezed her hand, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "This inheritance," Roger continued, "comes with certain conditions that must be maintained for a period of not less than 5 years from the date of distribution." But Amanda hardly seemed to hear this qualification. She was already whispering to Jackson, her eyes bright with plans and possibilities. When Roger attempted to elaborate on the conditions, she politely but firmly interrupted. "Mr. Harmon, I am sure I can review those details with you privately. I think we have taken enough of everyone's time today." Roger looked momentarily taken aback but nodded. "Of course, we can schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss the specifics." As we left the law office, Amanda linked her arm through mine with more warmth than she had shown in months. "Can you believe it, Dad? 35 million. Grandpa really did love me." I tried to redirect the conversation. "Roger mentioned conditions, Amanda. That sounds important." She waved her hand dismissively. "Probably just standard legal language. Investment restrictions, distribution timelines, that sort of thing. Nothing to worry about." Jackson was already on his phone, apparently sharing the news. "Dinner at La Maison tonight to celebrate," he announced. "My treat. For now," he added with a wink to Amanda. Over the next few weeks, I watched with growing concern as Amanda proceeded as if the inheritance was already in her bank account, though the legal process would take months to complete. She and Jackson flew to New York to look at penthouses. She ordered a custom Range Rover. Her social media exploded with designer shopping sprees and champagne brunches. I tried calling her several times, leaving messages asking if she had met with Roger to discuss the conditions William had established. She finally returned my call while apparently in a taxi. "Dad, please stop worrying. I have a meeting set up next week. It is just formalities. The money is mine. William would not have attached conditions without good reason, I pressed. Grandpa was old-fashioned, she replied, her voice taking on an edge. He probably just wanted to make sure I do not blow it all at once. But it is my inheritance. I get to decide what happens with it. When I finally received a call from Roger Harmon asking to meet privately, I knew something was wrong. We met at his office on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. "Eli, I am concerned," he said after his assistant had brought us coffee. "Amanda finally came in for our meeting about the conditions of the inheritance, but she seemed disinterested in the details. She kept checking her phone and asking how soon the funds would be available. What exactly are these conditions?" I asked. Roger pulled out a folder. William was very specific. The $35 million is held in trust, with quarterly distributions contingent upon Amanda meeting certain behavioral and ethical requirements. He slid a document across the desk. As I read through the stipulations, I felt a chill run down my spine. William had essentially created a character test disguised as an inheritance. Amanda was required to maintain meaningful family relationships, particularly with her father, demonstrate ethical and productive use of distributed funds, including significant charitable giving, provide quarterly reports to the trustees detailing personal and philanthropic expenditures, refrain from excessive or wasteful spending as determined by the trustees, demonstrate commitment to personal growth through education, career development, or community service. The document named Roger and myself as the trustees, with full authority to determine if these conditions were being met. If we found Amanda in violation, the inheritance would be dramatically altered, with the bulk redirected to a foundation William had established. "Has she read this carefully?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I tried to explain the seriousness of these conditions," Roger replied, "but she assured me she understood and would comply. Based on what I have observed so far and what you have shared, I am not convinced she fully grasps her grandfather's intentions." "What happens now?" I asked. "The first quarterly review is approaching. Based on her current behavior, I'm afraid she will not meet the conditions. As trustees, we will need to make a decision." I left Roger's office with a heavy heart. William had placed me in an impossible position. I would either have to hold my daughter accountable, potentially losing what remained of our relationship, or betray the promise I had made to my father-in-law. I tried once more to reach Amanda, driving to her new luxury apartment building where the doorman almost did not let me up until I explained I was her father. She greeted me in a hurry, clearly on her way out to another event. "Dad, I do not have time right now. Jackson is waiting downstairs." "Amanda, please. This is important. Have you actually read the conditions of Grandpa's will?" She sighed dramatically. "Yes, Dad. Be nice to you. Give to charity. Do not be wasteful." "I get it. It is fine. It is more than that," I insisted. "There are quarterly reviews. If you do not meet the conditions, the inheritance changes." For a moment, she seemed to actually hear me, a flicker of concern crossing her face. Then her phone buzzed with a text. "Look, I have to go. We can talk about this later. I promise I will take it seriously." But she did not call later. Instead, I received a thick cream envelope in the mail, an invitation to her engagement party, to be held at the Thompson-Hamilton Hotel's Grand Ballroom, one of the most exclusive venues in the city. The date of the party, I noticed with a sinking heart, was scheduled exactly 1 week after our first quarterly review of the inheritance conditions. The Thompson-Hamilton Hotel stood like a limestone cathedral in the heart of downtown, its flags fluttering against the clear September sky. I parked my 10-year-old Volvo in the underground garage, feeling immediately out of place among the Bentleys and Maseratis. I had debated what to wear before settling on my best suit, the one I reserved for important client meetings and special occasions. It fit a bit more snugly than the last time I had worn it, at William's funeral. As I rode the elevator up to the Grand Ballroom, I rehearsed what I might say to Amanda. The quarterly review with Roger had gone as poorly as expected. In the 3 months since the initial inheritance announcement, Amanda had made no charitable contributions, had met with me only once for a rushed lunch, and had spent nearly $200,000 on what could only be described as luxuries. Roger had been firm. Unless something changed dramatically, We would have no choice but to enact the contingency plan William had designed. The elevator doors opened to reveal an opulent scene. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over at least 200 guests mingling in cocktail attire. Ice sculptures, shaped like swans, flanked a raw bar where a chef in white prepared fresh oysters. A string quartet played in the corner, though their classical arrangements were barely audible over the din of laughter and conversation. I accepted a flute of champagne from a passing server and scanned the room for Amanda. Several guests gave me curious glances, clearly trying to place me. I caught fragments of whispered conversation. That is her father, I think. The construction guy. Not from money, you can tell. I finally spotted Amanda in the center of the room, radiant in a designer gown that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Jackson stood beside her, his arm possessively around her waist as they greeted guests. They looked like they had stepped from the pages of a society magazine, and for a moment, I felt an unexpected surge of pride at how beautiful my daughter was, how confidently she commanded the room. Then I saw her spot me, her smile faltering for just a moment before she whispered something to Jackson and excused herself from her current conversation. She approached me with a practiced smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Dad, you made it." She kissed my cheek lightly, careful not to smudge her makeup. "I was not sure you would come." "I would not miss it," I replied. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." "Thank you." She glanced around nervously, as if concerned about who might see us talking. "Have you met anyone yet? Let me introduce you to Jackson's parents. They are just over there." Before I could respond, she was guiding me across the room toward an elegant couple in their 60s. Harold Reynolds had the same perfect teeth as his son, while his wife Cynthia eyed me with barely concealed assessment. "Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds, this is my father, Eli Thompson." Harold's handshake was firm but brief. "Ah, the builder. Jackson mentioned you have a construction company." "That is right," I replied. "Thompson Commercial Construction. We specialize in office buildings and healthcare facilities." "Fascinating," Cynthia murmured in a tone that suggested it was anything but. "Amanda, darling, Congressman Wilson just arrived. We should say hello." And just like that, I was abandoned. I drifted through the party, occasionally making small talk with guests who seemed as out of place as I felt. Some were colleagues from Amanda's earlier life, before Jackson, looking equally bemused by the extravagance surrounding us. After an hour, Jackson clinked his glass and called for attention. The room quieted as he launched into a speech about finding true love, about destiny and perfect matches. Amanda gazed up at him adoringly as he spoke of their future together. Then he turned to acknowledge those who had supported their journey. To Harold and Cynthia, the most wonderful parents a man could ask for. To our dear friends who have celebrated every moment with us. To Amanda's grandfather, William, who sadly is not with us today, but whose generosity has helped make our dreams possible. Not once did he mention me. I stood in the corner, champagne warming in my hand, feeling increasingly invisible. When the speech concluded with a toast to a future filled with unlimited possibilities, the crowd erupted in applause. I set my glass down on a nearby table and considered leaving, but I had promised Roger I would make one last attempt to speak with Amanda about the inheritance conditions before we took action. I waited until she broke away from a group of friends and approached her near the dessert table. "Amanda, could I speak with you privately for a moment? It is important." She glanced around anxiously. "Is this about Grandpa's will again?" "Dad, this is not the time or place. I would not ask if it was not urgent. Just 5 minutes." With obvious reluctance, she led me to a small antechamber off the main ballroom. "What is it?" "Roger and I had the quarterly review this week," I began carefully. "Amanda, you have not met any of the conditions William established. Not one. If things continue this way, the terms of the inheritance will change dramatically." Her face hardened. "So change them. You are one of the trustees, right? Just sign off that everything is fine." "It is not that simple. I promised your grandfather." "My grandfather is dead," she interrupted sharply, "and he had no right to control me from the grave. That money is rightfully mine. The money comes with responsibilities, Amanda. Values that William believed in. Values your mother and I tried to teach you." Her laugh was bitter. Values? You mean like living in the same middle-class house for 30 years, driving a car until it falls apart? That is not values, Dad. That is fear. Fear of reaching higher. Fear of actually living. Each word struck like a physical blow. Your mother and I gave you everything we could, and now Grandpa has given me everything else, she retorted. I do not need your approval or your permission to enjoy it. Amanda, please, think about what you are doing. This party alone must have cost. Do not. Her voice rose dangerously. Do not you dare comment on how I spend my money. It is not yours yet, I reminded her quietly. And at this rate, most of it never will be. Something flashed in her eyes then, something cold and calculating that I had never seen before. She took a step back, appraising me as if seeing me clearly for the first time. You want it for yourself, do not you? She said slowly. That is what this is about. The accusation was so absurd I could barely formulate a response. What? No, Amanda, I do not want or need your grandfather's money. Then why are you so obsessed with how I spend it? Why did he make you a trustee unless you convinced him to? He was concerned about you. We both were. The wealth. So suddenly. She cut me off, her voice rising further. You have always been jealous of our family's success. You married into it, but you never quite belonged, did you? Always the outsider. The worker among aristocrats. Guests near the entrance to our alcove had fallen silent, turning to watch the unfolding drama. Jackson appeared in the doorway, concern etched on his face. Everything okay here? Amanda turned to him, tears welling in her eyes. No, it is not. My father is threatening to cut off my inheritance if I do not live exactly as he thinks I should. That is not what I said, I protested, acutely aware of the growing audience. Is not it? She was nearly shouting now. You have never approved of my choices, my friends, my lifestyle, Jackson. None of it is good enough for your precious values. People were openly staring now. Jackson placed a protective arm around Amanda, glaring at me. I think you should go, he said coldly. Amanda, please. I tried one last time. Your grandfather wanted to protect you, to ensure the money did not change you. She looked at me then with such naked contempt that I barely recognized her as my daughter. It is too late for that. The money has shown me exactly who matters in my life, and who does not. She straightened, addressing me loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. You are an embarrassment. You are not welcome here. Please leave now before you ruin everything else. The room fell silent. Hundreds of eyes turned toward me, some pitying, others curious, many simply uncomfortable. In that moment, I felt utterly alone. Catherine gone. William gone. And now the daughter I had raised, looking at me as if I were a stranger, an inconvenience to be removed. I should have felt anger or humiliation. Instead, a strange calm settled over me. William had been right. Money does not change people. It reveals them. And in that moment of painful clarity, I knew exactly what I had to do. Without another word, I turned and walked through the parting crowd toward the exit. Once in the hallway, I pulled out my phone and dialed. Roger, it is Eli. I think it is time. Can you be at the Thompson-Hamilton in 30 minutes? Bring the file. For exactly 1 hour, I sat in my car in the underground parking garage. I was not hiding, simply gathering my thoughts and strength for what would come next. At precisely 9:30, Roger Harmon's black Mercedes pulled into a space near the elevator. The distinguished attorney stepped out, briefcase in hand, his expression grave. Are you certain about this, Eli? He asked as we rode the elevator back to the grand ballroom level. Once we take this step, there is no going back. Your relationship with Amanda has already been damaged beyond recognition. I finished for him. William knew this might happen. He prepared for it. So did I. The party was still in full swing when we re-entered the ballroom. If anything, the atmosphere had grown more boisterous, the music louder, the laughter more uninhibited. Several guests noticed our entrance, particularly Roger, who was known to many in these social circles. Whispers followed our path across the room. Amanda was holding court near the main bar, surrounded by friends, Jackson attentively at her side. When she saw me approaching with Roger, her smile faltered, replaced by a flash of anger. "You have got to be kidding me," she muttered as we reached her. "You actually came back?" "Amanda," Roger interjected smoothly. "I apologize for the intrusion, but there is a matter of some urgency we need to address." Jackson stepped forward protectively. "Whatever this is, it can wait until tomorrow. This is our engagement party." "I am afraid it cannot wait," Roger replied, his tone professional but firm. He glanced around at the curious onlookers. Perhaps somewhere more private would be appropriate. "No," I said quietly. "William would have wanted this to be public, just as Amanda chose to make her rejection public." Roger hesitated, then nodded. "As you wish." He turned to the increasingly curious crowd. "Excuse me, everyone. May I have your attention for a brief but important announcement?" The room gradually quieted, the quartet stopping mid-song. Hundreds of eyes turned toward our small group. Amanda's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "What do you think you are doing?" she hissed. Roger cleared his throat. "My name is Roger Harmon, executor of the estate of William Blackwood. Many of you know that William left a substantial inheritance to his granddaughter, Amanda Thompson. What you may not know is that this inheritance came with specific conditions." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Amanda's face drained of color. "Stop this," she whispered frantically. "Not here. Not now." Roger continued as if he had not heard her. The $35 million inheritance was contingent upon Amanda demonstrating certain values that were important to her grandfather. These included maintaining strong family ties, particularly with her father, Eli Thompson. All eyes flicked to me, standing quietly beside Roger. Additional conditions included ethical use of distributed funds, commitment to charitable giving, and responsible financial management. As trustee, it was my duty, along with Mr. Thompson, to evaluate whether these conditions were being met during a probationary period. Jackson stepped forward. "What are you talking about? What probationary period?" Roger opened his briefcase and removed a document. The terms were clearly outlined in Section 7 of the will, which states that failure to adhere to these conditions for a period of 6 consecutive months would trigger the contingency clause. Amanda grabbed at the document. "This is ridiculous. You cannot do this." "I am afraid we can, and we must," Roger replied steadily. "Amanda, over the past 6 months, you have made no charitable donations despite repeated reminders. You have purchased 3 luxury vehicles, put a down payment on a $5 million residence, and spent over $800,000 on personal items. You have missed 2 scheduled meetings with the trust committee and have repeatedly treated your father with disrespect, culminating in tonight's very public rejection." The room had gone completely silent. I could feel hundreds of eyes on us, witnessing Amanda's humiliation just as they had witnessed mine an hour earlier. Part of me wanted to stop this, to protect her even now. But William had been clear. The lesson had to be learned, no matter how painful. As such, Roger continued, his voice echoing in the silent ballroom. "Pursuant to the terms of William Blackwood's last will and testament, the primary inheritance of $35 million is hereby revoked." Gasps echoed throughout the room. Amanda swayed slightly, Jackson steadying her with a hand on her arm. "This is insane," Jackson sputtered. "You cannot just take away an inheritance. We will fight this in court." Roger shook his head. "The will is ironclad, Mr. Reynolds. William Blackwood had one of the best estate planning teams in the country. The conditions were clearly communicated, and Amanda was given multiple warnings about her non-compliance." Amanda turned to me, her eyes wide with shock and betrayal. "Dad, you cannot let this happen. That money is mine." "It was never yours, Amanda," I said softly. "It was entrusted to you, conditionally. There is a difference." "So what happens now?" Jackson demanded, his voice noticeably tense. "Where does the money go?" Roger closed his briefcase with a snap. "As specified in the contingency clause, the bulk of the inheritance will now be transferred to the Blackwood Foundation for Community Development. A smaller portion, approximately $2 million, will remain in trust for Amanda, accessible only for education, health care, or the establishment of a legitimate business enterprise." The whispers started immediately, spreading through the crowd like wildfire. I could see the calculations happening behind the eyes of Amanda's friends, of Jackson's parents, of Jackson himself. The glittering future they had all envisioned was evaporating before their eyes. Amanda stared at me, tears streaming down her face. "You planned this. You wanted to humiliate me." "No, Amanda. Your grandfather planned this because he loved you and feared what unearned wealth would do to you. I simply honored his wishes." She stepped back, bumping into Jackson, who was already pulling out his phone and stepping away. "This party is over," Amanda announced, her voice breaking. Then, turning back to me with eyes full of rage and pain, "And so are we. I never want to see you again." As she fled the room, followed by a confused and murmuring crowd, I stood my ground beside Roger. The elaborate party disintegrated around us, guests grabbing final drinks and departing in clusters of excited conversation. "That went about as well as could be expected," Roger observed dryly. I watched as Jackson huddled in a corner with his parents, their expressions grim as they spoke in urgent tones. Even from across the room, I could read the changing dynamics. The perfect match suddenly looked considerably less perfect. "William knew exactly what he was doing," I said quietly. "He just did not live to see it happen." "What now?" Roger asked. "Now we wait," I replied, "and hope that somewhere beneath all this, my daughter is still in there." The fallout was swift and merciless. By noon the next day, the story had spread throughout their social circle. My phone rang constantly with calls from Amanda's childhood friends and family members, all seeking confirmation of the rumors. I answered none of them, feeling that Amanda deserved privacy in her humiliation, even if she had not granted me the same courtesy. From mutual acquaintances, I learned that Jackson had called off the engagement 3 days after the party. His family had apparently made it clear that a young woman with a revoked inheritance and family drama did not fit their dynastic plans. The 5-carat diamond ring was returned via courier, not even in person. Amanda's new friends proved equally fickle. Invitations dried up. Brunches were suddenly overbooked. The circle that had embraced the heiress to $35 million had little use for the disinherited daughter of a construction company owner. I tried calling her several times, each call going straight to voicemail. I left messages expressing my willingness to talk when she was ready, explaining that this had been William's plan, not mine. After the 5th unanswered call, I stopped trying. 3 weeks after the party, Roger called with an update. "Amanda has hired Patricia Lawson to contest the will," he informed me, naming one of the most aggressive estate lawyers in the city. "They are claiming undue influence on William by you in his final years." "That will not stick," I replied, though the accusation stung. William was mentally sharp until the end, and there are plenty of witnesses to that fact. "I agree," Roger said, "but it will be unpleasant. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about the question carefully. William was. He must have known this would happen. I have to believe he thought it was worth it. The legal challenge proceeded exactly as Roger predicted. Depositions were taken, financial records examined, witnesses interviewed about William's mental state in his final months. Throughout it all, I caught only glimpses of Amanda at the law offices or courthouse, her face thin and pale, her designer clothes replaced by simpler attire. She refused to meet my eyes. 4 months into the legal battle, Patricia Lawson requested a meeting with Roger and me. In a conference room overlooking the city, she laid out their position. "My client is willing to accept the reduction in inheritance to $2 million, she began, "provided that the restrictions on its use are removed. She wants free access to those funds without oversight from the trustees." Roger glanced at me before responding. "That would defeat the entire purpose of William's estate plan, counselor. The restrictions were the point. Your client has already been publicly humiliated," Patricia countered. Surely that satisfied William's desire to teach her a lesson. $2 million instead of $35 million is punishment enough. I leaned forward. This was never about punishment. It was about values. Patricia's expression hardened. "With all due respect, Mr. Thompson, stripping someone of $33 million in front of hundreds of people feels very much like punishment. My client has suffered significant personal and social consequences already." I thought carefully before responding. The $2 million remains in trust, as William specified. We are not willing to remove the restrictions. The meeting ended shortly after, with Patricia warning that they would continue to pursue all legal avenues, but I could see in her eyes that she knew their position was weak. 2 weeks later, Amanda dropped the legal challenge. The announcement came through Roger, not directly to me. Along with it came the news that she had been forced to sell her luxury apartment, unable to maintain the mortgage payments. The cars, too, had been sold, at significant losses. The life she had begun building on the foundation of William's millions was crumbling around her. I wondered where she was staying, who was supporting her through this. The thought of my daughter alone and struggling tore at me. But each time I reached out, my messages went unanswered. Then, on a rainy Tuesday evening 7 months after the fateful party, my doorbell rang just after 11 p.m. I opened it to find Amanda standing on my porch, soaked from the rain, her makeup streaked down her face. She carried a single small suitcase. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I stepped aside immediately, ushering her into the house where she had grown up. She stood dripping in the entryway, looking around as if seeing it for the first time, or perhaps the last. "Let me get you a towel," I said, moving toward the linen closet, "and some dry clothes. I think some of your old things are still in your bedroom." When I returned, she had not moved from the spot, as if afraid to drip water on the hardwood floors that suddenly seemed so precious in their familiarity. "I had nowhere else to go," she said as I handed her the towel. "Jackson is engaged to someone else already. Did you know that? Annabelle Wright. Her father owns half of Seattle." "I did not know," I replied carefully. "I am sorry, Amanda." She laughed bitterly. "No, you are not. You predicted all of this. Did not you? You and Grandpa, plotting together to teach me a lesson." I sighed heavily. "It was not like that. We were trying to protect you." "Protect me? By taking everything away? By humiliating me in front of everyone I know? By helping you see what matters before it was too late?" I countered gently. "Before you built your entire life around money and status." She dried her hair roughly with the towel. "Well, mission accomplished. I have no money, no status, and no fiancé. Lessons learned. Change your clothes," I said. "I will make some tea, and we can talk. Really talk, Amanda. It has been too long." 20 minutes later, we sat across from each other at the kitchen table where we had shared thousands of meals as a family. Amanda looked younger in her old sweatpants and Northwestern University t-shirt, remnants of an earlier self. "Where have you been staying?" I asked. "With Tara," she replied, naming a childhood friend I had always liked. "But her roommate is coming back from teaching abroad, so I had to leave." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "I got a job," she said after a moment. "Assistant events coordinator at the Westlake Hotel. The pay is terrible, and my boss treats me like I am an idiot. But it is something. That is good," I said, genuinely pleased. "It is a start." She stared into her tea. "I sold everything. The clothes, the jewelry, even Mom's bracelet that Grandpa gave me for my 21st birthday." Her voice broke on the last part. The mention of the bracelet, a platinum and sapphire piece that Catherine had loved, hit me hard. "You sold that?" She nodded, tears falling now. I was desperate. The money went so fast, Dad. One day, I had everything, and the next, nothing. I did not know how to live without it all. I reached across the table and took her hand. "You always had everything you needed, Amanda. You just got confused about what that was." She pulled her hand away. Please do not lecture me now. I cannot take it." We sat in silence for a moment. The only sound, the gentle ticking of the kitchen clock that had hung on the wall since before Amanda was born. "Can I stay here?" she finally asked, her voice small. "Just until I find an apartment I can afford. I will pay rent, I promise. This is your home, Amanda. It always has been. You do not need to pay rent." She looked up at me, her eyes red, rimmed, and exhausted. "Why are you being nice to me? After everything I said to you, everything I did." "Because I am your father," I answered simply. "That does not change, no matter what." She broke down then, sobbing in a way I had not seen since Catherine's funeral. I moved around the table and held her as she cried, feeling her body shake with the force of her grief. Not just for the lost inheritance, I suspected, but for the lost years, the lost relationship between us, and perhaps most of all, for the person she had allowed herself to become. "I do not know who I am anymore," she whispered, when the tears finally subsided. "Everything I thought I wanted feels hollow now." "Then, this is your chance to figure it out," I told her. "To decide who you want to be without all the distractions." She nodded against my shoulder, exhausted. "I am so tired, Dad." "I know, sweetheart. Get some sleep. Your room is just how you left it. We can figure everything else out tomorrow." As I watched her climb the stairs to her childhood bedroom, I felt the first real hope I had experienced in months. The road ahead would not be easy for either of us. Trust had been broken, harsh words exchanged, bridges burned, but she had come home. It was a start. I called Roger the next morning to update him. "She is staying with me for now," I explained. "It is going to be a long process, but I think William's plan might work after all." "He would be pleased," Roger replied. "He loved her very much, you know. Enough to risk her hating him." "I know," I said quietly. "So do I." 6 months passed quickly. Spring turned to summer, and the garden Catherine had loved so much bloomed again. Amanda and I fell into an unexpectedly comfortable routine. She worked long hours at the hotel, coming home exhausted but with stories of demanding clients, workplace politics, and the occasional celebrity encounter. I listened, offering advice only when asked, conscious of the fragile new foundation we were building. The first major breakthrough came when she asked about the Blackwood Foundation that had received the bulk of William's inheritance. "What exactly does it do?" she asked one Sunday morning as we worked together in the garden. "Grandpa never mentioned it to me." "Because it did not exist until his death," I explained, pruning a rosebush Catherine had planted. "It was created through his will as the contingency plan. It supports affordable housing developments, educational programs in low-income neighborhoods, and small business grants for entrepreneurs who might not qualify for traditional funding." She sat back on her heels, wiping sweat from her brow. "That sounds like Grandpa, always thinking about building things that last." "The foundation has a board opening," I ventured carefully. "Roger mentioned it last week. They meet monthly, review grant applications, visit project sites." She was quiet for a long moment. "Do you think they would want me, after everything?" "I think William would have wanted you involved, eventually. That was the point, not to punish you, but to bring you into the fold in a meaningful way." The following week, she submitted an application for the board position. To her surprise and mine, she was accepted without reservation. She approached the responsibility with unexpected dedication, reading stacks of grant proposals and asking thoughtful questions during meetings. "There is this women's shelter proposal I think we should fund," she told me one evening, spreading papers across the dining room table. "They need renovation work on their facility. Actually, I thought maybe Thompson Construction might be interested in the project. Maybe at cost?" I smiled at her enthusiasm. "Send me the details. We will make it work." Our Sunday dinners became a tradition, sometimes just the two of us, occasionally including Roger or Amanda's rediscovered friends from before the inheritance drama. Old friends, I noticed, not the social climbers who had abandoned her when the money disappeared. One such Sunday, almost a year after she had shown up on my doorstep, Amanda arrived with a small wrapped package and a nervous expression. "What is this?" I asked as she handed it to me. "Open it," she urged, watching my face intently. Inside the box was Catherine's platinum and sapphire bracelet, the one Amanda had sold in her desperation. "How did you?" I began, stunned. "I tracked it down at the jewelry store where I sold it. They had not resold it yet. I have been making payments on it for 4 months. She smiled shyly. "I finally paid it off yesterday." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Amanda, you should keep this. Your mother would want you to have it." She shook her head firmly. "I want you to hold on to it for me, until I have really earned it back." That night, after Amanda had gone to bed, I sat in my study, looking at old family photos. Catherine smiling on our honeymoon. Amanda, as a toddler on William's shoulders. The 4 of us at Amanda's high school graduation. A family built on love, not money. I thought William would be proud of how far his granddaughter had come. The following week, I invited Roger over for dinner. After Amanda had gone out with friends, we discussed the matter I had been considering for some time. "Are you certain about this, Eli?" Roger asked. William was very specific about the 5-year probationary period. "William is not here," I replied. "I believe he would agree that Amanda has demonstrated real change. She has been working steadily for over a year, volunteers weekly at the women's shelter, and has become one of the foundation's most engaged board members." Roger nodded thoughtfully. "She is not the same young woman who threw that party." "No, she is not. She is becoming the woman Catherine and William always believed she could be." 2 days later, Amanda and I met Roger at his office. She assumed it was related to foundation business and was surprised when he pulled out the trust documents. "Amanda," Roger began formally, "as you know, your grandfather's will specified that $2 million would remain in trust for you, accessible only for education, health care, or business investment." She nodded. "I understand that. What you may not know is that there was a provision allowing for reconsideration of the larger inheritance after a 5-year period, contingent upon demonstrated personal growth and adherence to William's values." Her eyes widened. "But it has only been 18 months. Roger glanced at me. "Your father, as co-trustee, has requested we invoke the early reconsideration clause based on the remarkable changes you have shown." Amanda turned to me, stunned. "Dad?" I reached for her hand. "You have worked so hard, Amanda. You have rebuilt yourself from the ground up, just like I did with my company all those years ago. William would be proud of you. I know I am." Roger pushed a document across the desk. "This does not reinstate the full $35 million. Instead, it creates a new structured trust of $15 million, with you and your father as co-trustees." Amanda stared at the paper, then back at me. "I do not understand." "It means you will have access to significant resources again," I explained, "but with joint responsibility. We will make decisions together about investments, charitable giving, personal distributions." "Why now?" she asked. "Why not make me wait the full 5 years?" I smiled. "Because you do not need to. You have already learned the lessons William wanted you to learn, about value, about purpose, about what really matters." To my surprise, Amanda pushed the document back toward Roger. "I appreciate this more than I can say, but I am not ready." "Amanda?" I questioned, confused. "Dad, 18 months ago, the only thing I cared about was money. What it could buy me, the status it gave me, the life I thought I wanted." She took a deep breath. "I'm still figuring out who I am without all that. I'm finding purpose in my work with the foundation, in building something meaningful. I do not want to rush this process." Roger and I exchanged astonished glances. "What are you suggesting?" Roger asked. "Keep the trust, as William structured it for now. The $2 million for education or business investment. In fact," she straightened in her chair, suddenly determined, "I would like to access some of it. I have been taking night classes in nonprofit management. I want to do more with the foundation, maybe eventually lead some of its programs." I felt a surge of pride so strong it nearly overwhelmed me. "If that is what you want." "It is," she said firmly. "We can revisit the larger trust question in a few years, when I know I am ready for that responsibility." As we left Roger's office, Amanda linked her arm through mine, something she had not done since she was a teenager. "Did I surprise you?" she asked with a small smile. "Completely," I admitted. "William, too, I imagine." "I met someone," she said after a moment. "His name is David. He teaches at the community college and volunteers with one of our foundation's education programs." "You never mentioned him," I noted. "It is still new. He asked me out 3 times before I said yes." She laughed. "He thought I was out of his league because I drive a nice car." "The foundation car," I pointed out, amused. "Exactly. He has no idea about any of this. The inheritance, the drama, none of it. He just knows I work at the hotel and volunteer at the foundation." Her voice softened. "He likes me for me, Dad. Just me." 2 years later, I stood in the back garden of our family home, watching as Amanda and David exchanged vows under an arch of flowers. It was a small ceremony, nothing like the extravagant affair she had once planned with Jackson. The guests were few but genuine. Close friends, colleagues from the foundation, David's family, who had welcomed Amanda with open arms. Catherine's bracelet circled Amanda's wrist, returned to her the night before as my wedding gift. On her other wrist was a simple silver band that had belonged to David's grandmother. As they spoke their promises to each other, I thought about the journey that had brought us here, the pain and loss, the betrayals and reconciliations, the hard lessons learned. I thought of William and Catherine, watching from somewhere beyond, and hoped they would be proud of the woman their daughter and granddaughter had become. At the reception, Amanda clinked her glass for attention. "I want to thank everyone for being here today, especially my father." She turned to me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Dad, you once told me that money does not change people. It reveals them. You were right. I did not like what it revealed about me, but you never gave up, even when I gave you every reason to. You taught me that true wealth has nothing to do with bank accounts or status. It is about integrity, purpose, and love. I am the richest woman in the world today because of those lessons." Later, as the small gathering danced under string lights in the garden, Roger approached me with a glass of scotch. "William would have loved this," he said, watching Amanda laugh as David twirled her on the makeshift dance floor. "This is exactly what he hoped for." "Not exactly," I corrected him. "This is better than either of us could have imagined." The Blackwood Foundation continues to grow, now with Amanda as its executive director. The $2 million trust remains largely untouched, except for her education expenses. The larger inheritance remains in trust, gaining value until the day we both decide she is ready. That day may come soon, or it may never come at all. Somehow, it no longer seems to matter. What matters is Sunday dinners with Amanda and David in the home where she grew up. What matters is the work we do together through the foundation, building something meaningful that honors William's legacy. What matters is the knowledge that my daughter found her way back to the values that truly create a rich life. Money can build empires or destroy souls. It can reveal the worst in us, or, if we are lucky, help us discover the best. In the end, William's $35 million lesson was not about the money at all. It was about what we choose to value, and how those choices define who we become. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that risked a relationship to teach an important lesson? What values would you want to pass on to your children, regardless of your financial situation? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story touched you in any way, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that true wealth is not measured in dollars. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that sometimes the most precious inheritances have nothing to do with money at all.